The flashing red and blue lights cut through the quiet night, shattering the peace like glass against concrete. A man stands frozen on the sidewalk, his hands raised, his voice trembling as he pleads for understanding. The officer's tone is sharp, laced with suspicion, his hand hovering dangerously close to his weapon. A simple walk home has turned into a moment that could change. A life. But in just seconds, everything shifts. One shocking revelation will flip the power dynamic, leaving the officer more terrified than the man he tried to arrest. Marcus Johnson was the kind of man who believed in quiet strength. At 32, he had built a life that many in his neighborhood admired. An honest career, a stable home, and the deep respect of those who knew him. By day, Marcus worked as a community mentor, guiding troubled teens away from the same streets that once threatened to consume him. By night, he was simply a son walking his mother home after her late hospital shift, a ritual they cherished since his father passed away. The streets of their town carried stories. Some of progress, others of prejudice. And Marcus knew both well. He carried himself with calm dignity, a man who refused to let bitterness define him, no matter how often it tried. On this particular evening, the summer air was thick with stillness, broken only by distant traffic. Marcus's mother teased him about being overprotective, and he laughed it off. Yet beneath that laughter lingered a truth he rarely voiced. He knew how quickly peace could shatter, how easily suspicion could turn ordinary moments into dangerous ones. It started with the sudden glare of headlights. A patrol car slowed to a crawl beside Marcus and his mother, its engine growling low like a predator circling its prey. The officer inside squinted, his eyes narrowing as if their very presence on the sidewalk at night was a crime. Within moments, the car screeched to a stop, and a voice barked through the open window. "Hey, stop right there." Marcus instinctively held his mother's hand, steadying her trembling fingers. He tried to remain calm, his voice measured. "Officer, is there a problem?" The cop stepped out, tall, rigid, his badge gleaming under the streetlight. His hand hovered near his holster. "Don't play smart with me. What are you doing out here? Where's your ID?" Marcus blinked, caught between disbelief and frustration. "I'm just walking my mom home from work. That's all." But the officer's tone carried accusation, not inquiry. His mother's voice cracked as she whispered, "Marcus, please, just do what he says." Neighbors peeked through curtains, the silence of the block heavy with unspoken fear. They had seen this scene before. Different faces, same story. A black man confronted not with protection, but suspicion. Marcus reached for his wallet slowly, deliberately. Still, the officer flinched, his hand twitching closer to his weapon. "Keep your hands where I can see them," he barked. The tension thickened, every second stretching painfully. Marcus raised his hands, his chest heaving with restrained anger. "I'm cooperating, officer. There's no need for this." But the cop wasn't listening. His assumptions had already painted Marcus guilty in his mind. The flashing lights now bathed Marcus and his mother in an accusing red glow, transforming an innocent walk into a stage for humiliation and danger. And in that moment, the balance of power felt painfully clear. One wrong word, one wrong move, could turn this confrontation into tragedy. The officer's voice thundered in the night, echoing off brick walls and rattling Marcus's nerves. "Hands behind your head. On the ground." "No." Marcus froze. His mother clutched his arm, her eyes wide with terror, her voice trembling. "Please, officer, he hasn't done anything. He's just my son, walking me home." But her words were drowned by the officer's orders, each bark louder, more aggressive. The neighborhood, once hushed, now felt like a stage of oppression. Every window a silent witness, every shadow holding its breath. Marcus's chest burned. His dignity, his restraint, his very humanity were being stripped away by a man who saw only threat in his skin. He wanted to scream, to fight back, but he knew what that could cost him. So instead, he lowered to his knees, his palms open in surrender. "Officer," Marcus's voice cracked under the weight of humiliation, "I've done nothing wrong." The cop's smirk was a blade. "You people always say that." The words cut deeper than the command. His mother gasped, tears streaming, whispering prayers under her breath. The night felt suffocating, charged with the kind of silence that precedes disaster. Something shifted. As the officer reached for his cuffs, his gaze fell on Marcus's wallet, which had slipped from his pocket in the chaos. The leather folded open, revealing a polished badge glinting under the streetlight. The cop froze. His smirk dissolved into horror. His voice faltered. What is this? Marcus locked eyes with him, no longer pleading, but steady, unflinching. That, he said, his tone sharpened with restrained fury, is my badge. Detective Marcus Johnson. Badge number 4729. The power dynamic cracked like glass. The officer stumbled back, his hand retreating from his weapon as if it burned him. His confidence melted into panic. Detective? I didn't know. Sir, I didn't mean. Marcus rose slowly to his feet, his frame towering, his presence commanding. The fear that had gripped him moments ago twisted into a new fire. Controlled but fierce. His mother clutched his arm, this time not in terror, but in pride. You didn't need to know, Marcus said firmly, his voice carrying the weight of every unjust stop, every baseless suspicion. You should treat every man with respect, badge or not. The silence that followed was heavier than any shout. The neighbors, still watching, saw the tables turn. The cop's panic was raw, his authority crumbling under the truth. And for Marcus, the moment was more than survival. It was revelation. The officer's hand trembled as he stepped back, his earlier arrogance evaporating into a nervous stammer. Detective, I didn't realize. I thought you were. Marcus cut him off, his voice low but commanding. You thought I was just another black man to intimidate. That's the problem. The street was silent except for the officer's shallow breaths. Neighbors had stepped outside now, no longer just watching from behind curtains. A few raised their phones, recording. The balance of power had shifted. Not just between Marcus and the cop, but between the system and the community that had too often been silenced. Marcus turned slightly, addressing the officer with a calm, steely gaze. Your badge is supposed to protect people, not terrorize them. Remember that. His mother, still shaken, placed her hand on his shoulder. The pride in her eyes spoke louder than any words could. For her, this moment wasn't just about her son. It was about every mother who had prayed her child would come home safe. The officer, now sweating under the weight of his mistake and the eyes of the community, muttered an apology. But Marcus didn't need his words. Justice wasn't in that apology. It was in the lesson seared into everyone watching. With deliberate calm, Marcus retrieved his badge from the ground, slipped it back into his wallet, and said, "Respect should never depend on who a man is, but on his humanity. Remember that before you put another life in danger." As Marcus and his mother walked away, the flashing lights dimmed behind them, replaced by murmurs of solidarity from the onlookers. The confrontation had ended, but its echoes would linger. For once, the narrative did not end in tragedy. It ended in empowerment, in truth revealed. What happened that night with Marcus is not just a story about one man and one officer. It's a reflection of something far larger, far more painful, and far too common. Across America, countless men and women of color live under a shadow of suspicion. Their daily routines, walking home, driving to work, even sitting in a park, can become moments of danger, not because of what they do, but because of how they look. Marcus's badge saved him that night. But what about those without a badge? What about the young man walking home from school, the father running an errand, the grandmother waiting for a bus? Too often, they are left defenseless against the very people sworn to protect them. This is the heart of systemic racism in policing, a system where bias, conscious or not, can escalate ordinary encounters into life-threatening situations. Community leaders have long warned of this cycle. Reverend James Carter, a civil rights activist, once said, "Justice cannot exist where suspicion replaces respect and fear replaces trust." His words echo louder today than ever before. Studies consistently show that Black Americans are disproportionately stopped, searched, and subjected to force by law enforcement. These aren't isolated incidents. They're patterns, woven into the fabric of institutions that need deep reform. The consequences extend beyond individual humiliation or trauma. They fracture communities, erode trust, and widen the divide between law enforcement and the people they serve. But Marcus's story also reveals something powerful. Accountability and awareness can shift narratives. The officer's panic, his sudden recognition of Marcus's authority, exposed the double standard. It forced everyone present to confront the uncomfortable truth. That respect was given not when it was deserved as a human right, but when power demanded it. So where do we go from here? Change begins with both systemic reform and personal responsibility. Departments must invest in cultural competency training, strengthen accountability for misconduct, and prioritize community-based policing that builds trust instead of fear. On a personal level, we as citizens must speak out, record, report, and support those who face injustice. Most importantly, this story calls on us to reflect on our own biases. Do we approach others with suspicion or with humanity? Do we remain silent in the face of injustice, or do we demand better? From ourselves, our neighbors, and our institutions? Marcus's experience is a warning, but it's also a call to action. Because justice should never depend on the badge in someone's pocket. It should depend on the dignity in their skin. Marcus's story is more than one night on a dimly lit street. It's a mirror held up to society. It forces us to ask, how many lives have been broken because respect was withheld until power was revealed? How many voices silenced because their humanity wasn't enough? But it doesn't have to stay this way. Change begins when we refuse to look away, when we challenge the systems and the mindsets that allow injustice to thrive. And it begins with each of us choosing empathy over judgment, courage over silence, and unity over division. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us how you feel, what you've witnessed, or how you believe change can happen. Subscribe and share this video so that more voices join this conversation. Because every story told is another step toward justice. And together, we can build a world where respect isn't earned by a badge or title, but given freely because every human being deserves it.